Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Kelly Ripa opened up about an argument she had with her 3 children on Christmas during an episode of her Let's Talk Off Camera podcast on SiriusXM's Radio Andy. The live host shared the anecdote with her guest Bronwyn Newport on February 3. I've got to tell you, I tried to post a family carousel on Instagram on Christmas. I stopped talking to my kids for about 4 hours on Christmas because of the fighting and the arguing over, "You can't use that picture of me." "Well, you can't use that picture of me," she shared. I was like, guys, it's just a picture of us at church. It's not that deep. We're just in front of the Christmas tree at church. Kelly and Mark Consuelos tied the knot in 1996 when they eloped in Las Vegas, a year after meeting on the soap opera All My Children. They went on to welcome 3 kids, Michael, Lola, and Joaquin. The argument came after Kelly and her husband, Mark, made the decision to cut their kids out of their annual Christmas card. "We're tired of getting all the photos approved by our kids every year," the Riverdale actor told People in December. "We've cut them out," said Kelly. "They're out," added Mark. Naturally, that decision didn't go down so well with the 3, who complained that they weren't in the card this year, saying they felt slighted and reacting, "How could you?" "I said, I'm tired of waiting around for you to approve a picture. I've got to move," explained Kelly. Their solution, instead, was to have the pair pose with the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders when they were on the live set as guests and use that instead as the base for their card. Quote, "And Mark just has a look on his face that is just, he's so excited and happy. It's the happiest I've ever seen him in a Christmas card," shared Kelly. This isn't the first time the incident has occurred. One year, when the kids were also being not very cooperative, Mark used a photo of himself with his TV family on Riverdale. "That was another good Christmas card," said Kelly. Mark shared that the kids can make their way back into their Christmas card when they have kids of their own. "That's right," added Kelly. "But until there's grandchildren, they're done. We're just going to cut the kids out." Kelly had always known that holidays carried their own particular gravity, a gravity that could bend even the straightest plans into something domestic and messy and oddly beautiful. As a little girl in a small New Jersey house, Christmas was a constellation of expectations: red bows, the microwave hum of her mother's baking, a tree so tall it seemed to lean against the ceiling. Years later, standing in the kitchen of a house that never felt quite as small because cameras and offices and a perpetual publicness expanded everything outward, Kelly still treated the holiday like an heirloom, carefully passed from one year to the next. It was why every December she and Mark had made a ritual of the Christmas card. Not the brief perfunctory send-along that arrived anonymous among bills and catalogs, the kind you glanced at and tossed, but a card that meant something, a photograph sealed with a kind of domestic myth, a portrait of the family as they had managed, that year, to be. They weren't trying to be perfect. Perfection in their lives had become a running joke. Chaos was more honest. But the card was an assertion, a tiny press release from the front lines of their marriage and parenting. "We are here, together, with our 3 kids, and we made it through." Over nearly 25 years, the ritual mutated. The first cards had been awkward and smiling and stuffed with fake snow from the craft store. Later cards had turned into elaborate productions involving different outfits, color schemes, and the occasional location shoot. At some point, the children, Michael, Lola, and Joaquin, had become collaborators in the annual enterprise. That collaboration, the bargaining over which photo would or wouldn't go into circulation, was meant to be light. It had become a negotiation with its own timetable, full of text message deliberations, teenage sulks, and the occasional parental eye roll. By the time Kelly and Mark were preparing the 2025 card, the kids were adults. Michael had long since left for his own life. Lola lived in the city and rotated between coffee shops and modeling gigs. Joaquin was in a band, eternally auditioning for some new version of himself. Each had their own publicness now, Instagram personas, side careers that fed on visibility, which complicated what had once been a private family affair. Kelly and Mark were in equal parts bewildered and amused by the new bureaucracy their children had created. A photo of the kids, which used to be a natural family artifact, had become an item to be vetted and approved. Don't use that angle, or turn my chin down, or delete that one with the half frown. It was the sort of thing that in the abstract might provoke exasperation, but in the micro moments felt like an insult. The idea that the lovely, unedited realness of a family photo wasn't allowed to exist unless it met a young adult's carefully curated standards. So that year, something shifted. Kelly and Mark, who had spent countless hours negotiating outfit palettes and filters and the degree of posedness acceptable for a front-of-fridge photo, decided to rebel. "We're tired," Mark said one evening over a plate of takeout, hands greasy and animated in ways only his could be. "We're tired of getting all the photos approved by our kids every year." Kelly laughed, the kind of laugh that was part genuine amusement, part surrender. They had tried to adapt, to bend with the tide of their children's growing obsession with their digital identities. They had tried to meet their teenagers halfway, to let them choose angles or pick the filter, to respect
Children,
that
now
their
adults,
grown
had strong opinions about how they were seen in public, but it had become a production schedule as rigid as any morning show calendar. Approval chains had taken the spontaneity out of the holiday, so they did what any couple who had, over time, accumulated an appetite for mischief would do. They took the decision out of the kids' hands. "Let's just skip 'em this year," Mark suggested, the kind of offhand remark that arrives and then anchors itself. "Let's make the card about us." Kelly pictured the faces that would likely appear in her mind, her kids' mouths forming the words they'd surely say. How could you? It was theatrical, she knew, but also honest. The family had become three separate lives orbiting around the shared gravity well of home. Perhaps the card could be a private press release, a gentle taking of a bow. Perhaps cutting the kids out, visually and ceremonially, would be a way to reclaim something small of their marriage. There are reasons marriages evolve, and Mark and Kelly's had been shaped by the public world, a life lived in segments of 15-minute interviews and red carpets, where a private joke could become a public anecdote by the time the hour was up. Yet, beneath the laughter, the elopement in Las Vegas in 1996, the soap opera beginnings, the decades of co-parenting, there was a shared steadiness. The card, this year, was an act of stewardship. They would not let the holiday ritual be outsourced to a committee of adult children with their own schedules and expectations. On Christmas morning, the house awoke as it always did, with scent and noise and the comfortable chaos of people who loved each other enough to argue about where to put the extra tissue paper. The trees stood in the corner, lights like little approving witnesses. Kelly wore an old sweater her mother had liked. Mark fussed over coffee strength the way only Mark did, making faces and then soft apologies because he knew it would make Kelly laugh. The children arrived, by turns late and early, as if the family's clock were a negotiable thing. There were warm embraces, immediate jokes, the exchange of small gifts. It was a day densely packed with ritual, church in the morning, a late brunch, a soft lull in the afternoon where everyone retreated to their devices for a while, the hum of the house settling into the comfortable cadence of togetherness. After church, Kelly posed them for a carousel of family photos in front of the church's modest tree. The light there was gentle, the faces were real. She scrolled through the shots, felt them as momentary proof of a life that had weathered storms and lived through decades of love. She envisioned the annual card, the way their friends would open envelopes and feel a little twinge of being welcomed into the life of this family. It was important, she thought, to have a version of the family that was simply itself. No filters, no approvals. She uploaded the images to her phone, selecting the one she liked. An image of the 3 children, all laughing at a shared joke. Another of Mark leaning toward Kelly, eyes exhaling contentment. A portrait of the whole group with the church's tree blurred in the background like a halo. Then she drafted the carousel on Instagram, fingers moving as they always did. It was, to her, a small act. She hit post. Immediately, as if the sky had split, the negotiation began. Texts arrived in quick succession. "You can't use that picture of me," one message read. Another, "Delete the one with the weird mouth." Michael, Lola, Joaquin, each had an opinion, as if the family photograph belonged to them alone. Kelly felt a familiar coil of exasperation tighten inside her. She had posted what felt like an honest family moment. Suddenly, it was being treated like a commercial product that had to be polished and approved. "Guys," she typed, half laughing, half exasperated, "it's just a picture of us at church. We're in front of the tree. It's not that deep." And then the silence fell. Not the kind that comes with an unresolved argument, but a deliberate, principled silence. Kelly found herself not talking to her kids for a few hours on Christmas. 4 hours, she would later tell a friend, in a voice that carried more amusement than regret. 4 hours of stinging quiet that fit strangely into the day's pattern, like a sudden cold draft under the door. In the odd arithmetic of families, time can stretch and then snap. 4 hours is long enough to change the shape of an afternoon. It was long enough for Kelly to consider why the dispute had taken her by surprise. It wasn't the content of the dispute, that they objected to a photo, but the tenor. A picture had become a battleground for autonomy. Their children were no longer children, but they were still the ones who, in their minds, had a say in the family's image. In the hours that followed, Kelly replayed scenes in her head. She could picture Joaquin's half-amused face, Michael's degree of seriousness, Lola's performative outrage. They had said, "How could you?" And somewhere between the accusation and the punctuation, the holiday's calm thinned. Kelly and Mark, in their small rebellion, had chosen an unusual path. Instead of bargaining or asking for forgiveness in the immediate way parents sometimes do, a placating text, a compromise, they doubled down. The decision to cut the kids out of their annual card was the outward symbol of that choice. They would make the card their own this year, mark the door of the tradition with a small sign, "This is ours." Their solution, cathartic and unexpectedly cinematic, was to lean into the absurd. That week, while they were guests on the live set, they found themselves posing with the Dallas Cowboys Curl Girls. The decision, at first glance, looked like a prank. It read on announcement cards as a refined joke. Kelly and Mark arm in arm with a group of women whose uniforms were as iconic as a sitcom laugh track. The image, bright and slightly ridiculous, delighted them. Mark's face in the photo was the sort of portrait that made Kelly's heart tilt. The man she loved, not in a small domestic snap, but in full, giddy, delighted presence.